Under a gray sky, the sound of gunfire echoes across the water as boats exchange shots. Wilf Netherton sits calmly on a park bench, checking his watch as he waits. When Aelita West arrives, she accuses him of dragging her into danger. With this, Wilf asks what she's doing, and she answers that she's just trying to save the world and just not theirs, since theirs is already lost. With an enigmatic goodbye, she walks away, leaving Wilf unsettled as the sounds of chaos continue. Moving forward to 2032 in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a bright but exhausted young woman named Flynne Fisher brings coffee to her ailing mother. While looking for her mother's medications, she finds out that they're all gone. So she goes to a nearby trailer where her brother Burton is playing a virtual reality combat game. She demands his payment in order to replace the pills, accusing him of taking them. However, Burton asks her to cover for him and assures her that he will make some money from his gaming. With this, Flynne has no choice but to reluctantly agree. Afterwards, Flynne dons her headset and enters a hyper-realistic virtual battlefield, where she pilots her brother Burton's soldier avatar named Easy Ice. With her sharp reflexes and precision, she easily overwhelms the enemy forces and secures the victory for Burton's team. Later, she withdraws her earnings from an ATM where Tommy, a friendly local cop, notices the large sum and casually checks in, asking about her mother's health. Meanwhile, at her day job in a 3D printing shop, Flynne chats with her friend Billy Ann, who teases her about playing it too safe. Billy Ann urges her to take more risks, both in life and maybe with Tommy, whom she long suspects that Flynne secretly likes. On the other hand, Macon and Edward, friends and former Marine comrades of Burton, arrive at the trailer carrying a mysterious new VR device they meant to give to Burton. They explain that it's an experimental prototype that is being offered for free testing. Flynne, who has always been so cautious, scans it for any malware and confirms it's clean. Burton insists that it's a next-generation simulation, which is quite unlike anything they've tried before. Curious, Flynne agrees to test it, but the moment she puts on the headset, the real world fades away, and she's pulled into an entirely new reality. For some reason, the new VR simulation feels unusually real. Even the sound, scent, and sensation are all so advanced. Just then, a commanding woman's voice directs Flynne through her mission, promising payment upon her completion. Now inhabiting her brother Burton's avatar, Easy Ice, she finds herself at a lavish garden party in what seems to be a futuristic version of London. Her objective is to gain the trust of Marielle Raphael by seducing him. After some time of charm and flirtation, Marielle finally invites her into a sleek, self-driving car that is being controlled by an AI chauffeur. When instructed, Flynne secretly crushes a glass ampoule under Marielle's nose, but the AI driver immediately turns hostile, launching a deadly attack at her. Acting on instinct and training, Flynne moves with precision, disabling the machine-driven assassin before she successfully escapes into the night, feeling shaken by how terrifyingly real the simulation feels. Later, in the parking lot, Flynne comes face to face with the mysterious woman from before, and she recognizes her as Aelita West. Surprisingly, Aelita calls Flynne her first pilot, and mysteriously asks what she would do if she knew she wouldn't exist in 10 years. The question lingers in Flynne's mind. Before leaving, Aelita also tells her there will be more tomorrow, which only makes Flynne more unsettled. So she removes the headset and insists that the simulation felt too real to be merely virtual. At home, Burton listens to her story, skeptical but intrigued, before revealing that the company actually offered to double her payment and they want her to log back in. Soon after, Flynne visits a local dealer to buy her mother's medication, but she only has enough money to buy one pill. The men at the table start to intimidate her, so Connor, who is a local veteran missing both legs and an arm, rolls up with defiance. He uses his sharp wit and fearlessness to force the men to back down, and their humiliation later earns them a harsh scolding from their boss, Corbel, who demands they show strength. Back home, Flynne finds Burton in severe pain. His body is covered in strange bioluminescent patterns that carve until beneath his skin. To know what's happening, she puts the headset back on and returns to the simulation. Flynne soon wakes up as Easy Ice strapped to a surgical table. Just then, Alita's voice tells her she can't log out. Flynne feels the pain as a surgeon operates on her eye. The agony is quite real. When she wakes up, the implanted eye functions as a biometric key. Guided by Aelita, she enters a high-security facility using Marielle's retinal scan and descends into an underground chamber. There, she's instructed to press the eye against an inverted pyramid. Before she can, a man bursts in, shouting Alita's name and attacking her with precision. Flynne fights back, surviving only through pure instinct before being overpowered and forcibly logged out. Drenched in sweat, she rips off the headset and gasps, telling Burton with conviction the words, "Never again." The next morning, Flynne calls in sick as her mind is still reeling from the night before. Billy Ann immediately senses something's wrong, so she stops by to check on her. Flynne tries to explain the game to her. She insists it wasn't virtual reality at all and that it felt real. Billy Ann tries to listen but can't make sense of it, so she brushes it off as merely stress or exhaustion. Later, Wilf contacts Flynne directly with an urgent tone. He tells her that she's in real danger, that what she experienced wasn't a simulation, and everything she believes about the system is just a lie. He pleads with her to log back in before it's too late. With that, fear floods her voice as she hangs up, unsure whether to believe him or simply run. Meanwhile, a state trooper notices several suspicious vehicles on a dark stretch of road and decides to follow them. When he approaches, the men vanish into thin air, and their car turns invisible before mowing him down. In the aftermath, only blood and tire tracks remain, acting as an eerie evidence of unseen killers. That night, Flynne finishes her shift at the print shop when the 3D printers around her suddenly start humming and flickering. It ends up projecting a chilling message saying a $9 million bounty has been placed on her head. Panic sets in as she realizes the threat is real. With nowhere else to turn, her only hope for survival is to return to the virtual world and uncover who is trying to kill her. Flynne races home in panic to warn Burton about the bounty, but he is surrounded by friends and half drunk, so he ends up dismissing her fear as just another overreaction. Connor, however, senses danger and insists that something is deeply wrong. With this, Burton reluctantly sets up their defensive drones, sending them to sweep the woods outside. The screens light up with flickers of movement, but they're already too many and too close, and soon, a heavy silence falls over the Fisher home as mechanical wings hum in the night. Figures also shift in the darkness and close in. Flynne's heart pounds as she finally accepts the truth that the line between the simulation and her world is now gone. She realizes that whatever she brought back from that headset is now coming for them. On the other hand, Cherise Nuland, the cold and calculating head of the Research Institute, discusses the growing crisis with her subordinate, Daniel. He reports that their systems were compromised through the avatar known as Easy Ice, which has been traced back to a woman named Flynne Fisher. The breach is tied to Aelita West's defection and has exposed sensitive operations. With this, Cherise orders Daniel to contain the situation immediately, deploying every resource necessary to eliminate the threat before it gets out of control. Flynne's home becomes a stronghold in 2032 as Burton and his unit prepare for a possible assault. He orders Flynne to take their mother into the basement while he and his squad get ready. Soon, the night erupts into chaos as flares streak across the trees, drones buzz through the darkness, and gunfire echoes through the woods. Despite being outnumbered, Burton's team operates effectively, cutting down the bounty hunters one by one. When the smoke finally clears, the yard is littered with the wreckage and silence returns. The Fishers have survived for now. In the year 2100, Lev Zubov contacts Wilf Netherton with startling news. They find out that Flynne Fisher is still alive and unharmed in her own timeline. With Lev's orders, Wilf reestablishes contact with Flynne through the link and persuades her to return to what she still believes is a simulation. Once she logs in, he finally tells her the truth that she's not in a game at all. As it turns out, her consciousness has already been quantum linked across time to inhabit a synthetic body in his world, which is called a peripheral. So although her real body remains in 2032, her mind now exists in his century. To probe his claims, Wilf takes Flynne through the empty streets of a futuristic London. There, he shows her a digital newspaper, revealing that her mother is destined to die from a brain tumor in her own timeline. Then, he offers a deal that will change everything. He tells her that if Flynne helps him find Aelita West, he will ensure her mother receives the life-saving medication. When Flynne returns to 2032, the illusion of safety is gone. She finds Burton and his crew disposing of the bounty hunters' bodies. Afterwards, she confronts her mother, and Flynne learns that her illness is far more advanced than she ever admitted. Now, the promise of a cure feels both miraculous and ominous, binding Flynne more tightly to the dangerous future she wants to escape. Soon after, Tommy investigates the strange disturbances around the town and discovers the invisible vehicles used in the recent assault. When he questions Burton about a high-tech bullet found at the scene, Burton's responses only deepen Tommy's suspicions. Meanwhile, Flynne logs back into the Peripheral and meets Lev Zubov, along with his associates, named Ash and Ossian. They reveal the existence of multiple timelines to her, and Aelita West, who was once part of the powerful Research Institute, was the only person capable of bridging them. Without her, the connection between their worlds will vanish. However, Flynne remains skeptical and demands proof that helping them will truly save her mother. True enough, when she disconnects from the Peripheral, she finds her mother's eyesight suddenly restored. This miracle confirms Wilf's promise and establishes his control over Flynne. In Clanton, 2015, a younger Corbel Pickett runs a flashy car dealership. When a group of local bikers arrives to buy several cars, Corbel greets them with his charm and promises free lifetime repairs. But beneath his friendliness lies a ruthless plan. After convincing the bikers to test the vehicles from inside, he locks the doors and reveals that the cars are completely bulletproof, completely sealing them in under the blazing sun. After hours had passed, the men slowly died from the heat. Corbel then prepares to crucify their bodies on a nearby hill as a warning to others. With this, he takes full control of Clanton's criminal trade. Unbeknownst to him that a young Jasper happened to witness the horror unfold, and his innocence was shattered by Corbel. In the present, Corbel and his wife are debating the job offer about murdering the Fisher family. This is because a $2.5 million deposit has already been made to him, yet he remains unsure whether to keep the money and go, or to complete the job and get the full amount. His wife suggests they be patient about it and carefully consider their options before making any decision. The next morning, Flynn walks into the kitchen to find her mother reading the newspaper, realizing her eyesight is completely restored. However, this gratitude mixes with unease as Flynn soon realizes that this miracle actually came with a price. Later, she confides in her best friend Billy Ann, revealing everything about the mysterious future connection and her partnership with Wilf. Billy Ann listens, stunned and speechless. When Flynn tells Burton what she's done, he becomes furious. He reminds her that Billy Ann's husband, Jasper, is Corbel Pickett's nephew, so even the smallest leak of information could put their entire family in grave danger. Soon after, Flynn returns to the year 2100 and meets again with Wilf, Ash, and Lev. Wilf explains that the woman whose eye was stolen, Marielle Raphael, was an assistant security manager at the Research Institute, linking back to Aelita's conspiracy. Ash warns Flynn that their next major threat is now Corbel Pickett, who has become dangerously involved in their affairs. With this, Flynn insists that she will need more time to warn her brother and prepare for what's coming. A flashback then reveals that Wilf and Aelita were adopted by a wealthy family when they were young, offering a glimpse into their past. In the present, Wilf visits his foster mother, who reluctantly admits that she saw Aelita just a month earlier. She says Aelita told her she was staying where snow last fell in London. This makes her uneasy, so the woman ends her visit quickly. In a stub timeline, Burton argues that the only way to protect their family is to kill Corbel Pickett before he strikes first. Flynn, however, refuses to let him, insisting that they are not murderers. Instead, Burton devises an alternative. He arranges a meeting with Corbel and offers him $200,000 per week in exchange for leaving their family alone and staying out of their affairs. To make his warning clear, Burton uses his haptic link to connect with one of his fellow Marines stationed nearby. Without hesitation, the Marine takes a sniper shot that shatters Corbel's glass mid-conversation and intentionally misses him by mere inches. The precision and control terrify Corbel, who realizes the threat is very real. From a distance, Tommy also witnesses their tense encounter, so his suspicion of the Fishers deepens as he silently takes note of the scene. At the same time, Flynn and Wilf track Aelita's last known location in the future, linking their senses through a haptic connection. Just then, a robotic officer inspects Flynn's peripheral for any signs of unauthorized modifications. Wilf, however, distracts it with a quick kiss, allowing them to pass freely. At the Research Institute, Cherise grows increasingly impatient and decides to kill Grace, a scientist, by poisoning her tea with pheromones after learning she leaked some of their data to Aelita. She also warns Daniel that he'll end up sharing her fate if he fails to fix the Fisher problem. In the stub, Burton explains the concept of haptic drift, which is the psychological blending of linked minds that can feel disturbingly intimate. Meanwhile, Jasper delivers a bag of money from Burton's land to Corbel. Curious, he peeks inside and finds it filled with cash. Because of this, Corbel rewards him with a cut and orders him to uncover how the Fishers are making so much money. Soon, Flynn decodes the clue where snow last fell and finds out that it refers to Dr. John Snow, the historical physician. She and Wilf trace the lead to a secret underground lab in London, where they find the surgical room used to remove Marielle's eye. Just then, Daniel suddenly arrives with a combat robot, sparking a brutal fight. However, Flynn and Wilf easily overpower him, and that's when Daniel admits that Flynn allegedly took something from them. But before he can explain, Cherise remotely commands the robot to kill him, silencing him permanently. In London, 2075, a young Wilf and Aelita used to forage for food in a city that had been destroyed. These difficulties largely influenced their lives. Then suddenly, strangers capture them, ending their fight for survival. By the year 2100, London has somehow recovered, although its scars are still apparent beneath the surface of technological progress. When Wilf first meets Lev, he shares his limited knowledge of Aelita's disappearance. But since she no longer has her neural implant, which was essential to life in their time, Lev worries that she might be dead already. Back in the Stub timeline, Flynn's body begins to deteriorate due to her repeated use of the headset. She begins to suffer from seizures, trembling hands, and blurred vision, which forces Burton to rush her to the hospital. There, the doctors warn her that the continued use could kill her. Meanwhile, Cherise reboots the robotic Daniel, interrogating him about Wilf and his allies. Furious that something was stolen from her, she vows to reclaim it at any cost. When Flynn returns home, Burton forbids her from re-entering the simulation again until she fully recovers. Connor, who is trying to help, dons the headset himself, but Ash quickly detects the substitution and disconnects him from the link. Later, when Wilf contacts Flynn, she tells him that her condition is worsening. In a rare moment of honesty, Wilf tells her that Alita was like a sister to him. When he later confronts Lev reveals that Alita was involved in a time-altering experiment that wiped out his entire family. With Burton and Connor's help, Flynn returns to the simulation despite her worsening condition. Determined, she demands to see London as it truly is. With that, Wilf reveals the grim reality that most of humanity has now perished following the Jackpot, which is a chain of neoprim terrorist attacks, wars, pandemics, and climate disasters that left only a fraction of the civilization still standing. A year before her disappearance, Alita's last visit was to Grace at the Research Institute. Their reunion begins warmly, with Grace mentioning her marriage and children, and Alita admitting that Grace once broke her heart. Still, their talk soon turns professional. Alita presses for details about Grace's secret work. With this, Grace reluctantly reveals a stub project in the behavioral modification department, where a shell company supplied haptic implants to soldiers. These implants were said to be altered to control empathy by manipulating the brain's compassion center. However, their talk is cut short when Mariel enters, asking about Alita's unauthorized visit, and Grace defends her by lying that it's just a friendly call. Moving onwards, at Key West, in the year 2032, the retired assassin Robert Bob O'Connell receives a mysterious package that includes a sonic gun and a phone. Bob declines Daniel's $10 million offer to kill the Fishers over the phone, but Daniel threatens to kill his daughter. After learning that his former colleague Frank had betrayed him, Bob is compelled to comply and murders Frank and his sons. After that, Bob decides to kill Burton and Flynn. Meanwhile, Billy Ann believes Jasper stole the roll of cash from the bag Burton brought to Corbel Pickett after finding it in his coat. However, Jasper insists that it was a sign of trust from Corbel to give it to him. Soon after, Flynn visits her doctor, who performs a spinal tap to analyze a mysterious bacterium found in her occipital lobe. Meanwhile, Bob calls his pregnant daughter to say a quiet goodbye before spotting Flynn and Burton on the road and gets ready to set up an ambush. As the attack begins, Billy Ann suddenly enters the scene and shoots Bob with her shotgun. Afterwards, Tommy arrives, arrests Bob, and grows increasingly wary of the Fishers' secrets. On the way to the station, an invisible car mysteriously rams them, and several unknown agents abduct Bob. Because of this, Flynn returns to the Peripheral in a fit of rage and confronts Wilf for not warning her about the hit. She demands answers from him, and she insists on meeting Cherise directly. When she reaches their robotic forms at the Research Institute, Cherise accuses her of stealing something, but Flynn immediately denies, confused about her accusations. Then, she follows her instincts and snaps Cherise's peripheral neck before walking away. In the year 2028 in Texas, Burton, Connor, and their Marine unit endure a brutal firefight. In the chaos, a dog is trapped behind a fence, and they argue about saving it before a bomb explodes. This incident leaves Connor paralyzed while the group is deeply scarred. In the present, Detective Ainsley and her assistant Beatrice investigate Daniel's mysterious death, while Tommy is forced to take a leave after uncovering that his superior is covering up the case and is possibly taking bribes from the Research Institute. Afterwards, Wilf reveals to Flynn that London is now largely an illusion. Even its people are artificial constructs that are meant to comfort the few remaining real survivors. As Flynn searches for clues at the store where she bought her peripheral, they assume that Aelita may have hidden some vital data in a physical object within Flynn's timeline. With this, Wilf begins questioning Reggie, who warns them that Aelita's actions have drawn the attention of the dangerous neoprims. Meanwhile, in the Stub, Connor insists on joining the Peripheral network despite Macon's doubts. On the other hand, Flynn finally makes Ash agree to build peripherals for both Connor and Burton after relentless urging. On the other hand, Tommy decides to defy his suspension, determined to uncover the truth. In Clanton, Sheriff Jackman delivers Bob to Corbel, who restrains him with an electric collar while deciding what to do with him. Using the haptic link, Leon, Burton's close friend, connects with Connor to somehow ease his pain, but he is haunted by the trauma he experiences through the bond. Meanwhile, Ash and Ossian discover that Flynn's doctor, Dee Dee, has been researching bacterial infections in the occipital lobe, which leads Wilf and Flynn to realize that Alita may have implanted the stolen data directly into Flynn's brain. Back in Clanton, Bob kills Mary, Corbel's wife, using his collar, and escapes with the intent of finishing his hunt for the Fishers. At the same time, Detective Ainsley travels to London in 2100 to question Lev, Wilf, and their group about Daniel's death. She demands to meet the three AI-linked peripherals, which forces Flynn, Burton, and Connor to log in together for their tense first encounter with her. Elsewhere, Reese takes Ella to Dee Dee's clinic when her vision begins failing again, unbeknownst to them that Bob is closing in already. In the future, Wilf joins Flynn as Detective Ainsley brings her, Connor, and Burton to a Met Police training site. There, Ainsley begins to interrogate Flynn about her timeline, revealing that in her version, Flynn actually ends up marrying Tommy, and they even have children. Meanwhile, Connor and Burton face Ainsley's AI aide, Beatrice, in combat training and are swiftly overpowered. At the same time, Tommy's investigation deepens when he discovers that all evidence of his SUV crash has been erased by the police. When he visits the impound lot, he uncovers Bob's custom weaponry and confirms that there is indeed corruption within his department. Meanwhile, Bob storms into Dee Dee's clinic, where he kills Reese and kidnaps both Dee Dee and Ella. Afterwards, Flynn, Burton, and Connor see Reese's note and immediately race to the clinic to rescue them. Elsewhere, Tommy is called to the Corbel Pickett's estate, where Mary's body lies. To cover up the issue, Sheriff Jackson pressures him to frame the Fishers for the violence, but Tommy refuses, realizing just how far this entire conspiracy has become. Soon, Lev orders Ash and Ossian to secretly hack into the Fishers' peripherals to keep track of them, though Ash warns that Ainsley could notice their interference. Meanwhile, Cherise visits Ainsley and her AI assistant Beatrice, and shocks her by revealing that Beatrice is actually a clone of Ainsley's own daughter. Cherise then demands that Ainsley eliminate everyone connected to the stolen data, including the Fishers, Lev, Ash, and their allies. Later, Lev discovers that Aelita had hidden the critical information they needed from the research institute inside Flynn's brain. With this, Ash and Ossian secretly plan to sell it to the Neoprims. Back in the Stub timeline, chaos erupts as Tommy shoots Sheriff Jackson and injures Corbel using his sonic gun, while Burton, Connor, and Flynn rush to the clinic and manage to kill Bob, ultimately ending his pursuit. Following the incident, EMTs begin rushing to Corbel Pickett's mansion, where Tommy struggles to stay composed. Despite all these, Corbel miraculously survives the sonic blast. Just then, Tommy receives another urgent call about a violent attack happening at Clanton Urgent Med. When he arrives, he catches Dee Dee completely traumatized while recounting everything that happened. Tommy does his best to comfort her, but the situation feels out of control. Meanwhile, Ainsley contacts Flynn and Burton, offering them both protection and resources in exchange for their cooperation. Desperate, they plead for her to cure their mother's illness, but Ainsley tells them that Ella only has 23 days left to live. Soon after, Ash secretly meets with Cherise and betrays her friends by revealing that the stolen Research Institute data is hidden inside Flynn's brain. Ash attempts to manipulate both sides, so she insists that Lev cannot be trusted and urges Cherise to simply eliminate him. Meanwhile, Flynn and Wilf continue searching for Aelita in the future. Wilf admits he feels guilty for using Flynn for his own purposes. Eventually, they encounter both the younger and older versions of Aelita. The older Aelita reveals the truth to them by saying that the Klept were responsible for killing over 5 million people and then erased everyone's memories to cover up their crimes. And the only key to exposing them lies within Flynn's mind. Aelita is now working with a resistance movement to bring the truth to light. Now that Corbel is hospitalized, Atticus, one of his men, attempts to take control of the gang. He and his crew pile into Jasper's car drunk. Jasper, however, is already overwhelmed by their arrogance and corruption. So he parks the car on the railroad tracks, steps away, and calls Billy Ann as a train speeds toward them. The train collides with the vehicle and ends up killing everyone inside. Meanwhile, Tommy warns Flynn that a militia is said to be preparing a missile. She soon realizes that Cherise may be behind it, so Flynn quickly logs into the simulation and acts as if she knows nothing before confronting Ash. Faced with pressure, Ash admits that Cherise is behind the attack. When Flynn meets Connor in person within the London simulation, she formulates a bold plan with Ainsley's help, which is to open a new stub and create an alternate timeline where Cherise cannot reach her or her family. Before putting it into motion, Flynn battles and defeats several of Cherise's peripherals. Realizing that her own death is the only way to protect everyone and reset the game, she entrusts Connor with the painful task. Standing by a quiet creek, she counts down as Connor takes aim, and a single shot can be heard. Moments later, Flynn wakes up beside Ainsley in a new timeline. Ainsley looks at her with authority and asks if she is now ready to get to work. With this, a new chapter in Flynn's fight for the future begins.